Pat Forde, Sports Illustrated senior writer covering college athletics, and I believe he was watching a basketball game or something that resembled a basketball game last night with Kansas and Kentucky. What's the takeaway from the basketball that you saw last night?
They told us it was basketball. I remain unconvinced after having been there. It was traumatic. I mean, it was as bad as it gets. Kansas won shooting 30%. Both these teams are not vintage versions of themselves. I mean, Kansas and Kentucky usually are national championship contenders. Maybe one or both of them will round into that form, Dan, but they're a long way from that now, which is actually par for the course for both of them, but especially Kentucky at this time of year. But Kentucky hasn't been 1-2, which they are now since Billy Gillispie was the coach. So this is the worst start they've had under Calipari. He doesn't have the horses that he usually has, it doesn't appear. So his annual kind of build from nothing to something is going to be a little bit steeper and more difficult this season.
Give me 3 players that we should keep an eye on in college basketball this year.
3 players. I think that obviously Luka Garza at Iowa, who put up 40-something in their game last week. A lot of people surprised he stayed in school. He's not an unbelievable athlete, but boy, he's got skill and will. He's tough. He's strong. He's relentless. I would say Jalen Suggs, freshman at Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is the best team, and he's the highest recruited player they've had there. And a little bit off the radar, but Cade Cunningham, another star freshman. He's at Oklahoma State, which is not eligible for the postseason, but he's really good, and he's going to be a very high draft pick.
Does Duke have one of those guys?
Not really. That's, you look at Duke and you look at Kentucky, and you sure don't see Zion Williamson. You don't see Anthony Davis. You don't see Karl Towns, any of those sort of guys. You see a lot of good players who were highly recruited, but I don't think you see somebody who is going to be a superstar freshman and then a, top 3 pick for either team.
All right, let's turn our attention to college football. You have the playoff selection show, week 2 here. There weren't any headlines until Kirk Herbstreit said the following.
I still think Michigan waves the white flag, potentially avoids playing Ohio State next week. And then, David, they'll potentially get a game on the 19th. They could be sitting there with 6 games. And Michigan, is that fair, David? Michigan could opt out, basically, of that game and keep Ohio State out of 6 games to qualify for the Big Ten championship. That doesn't make sense to me. But I think a lot of people wanted to see where Ohio State would be.
Your reaction to that, Pat?
Was, whoa, did I just hear that? I was watching it in real time, and I was like, did Kirk Herbstreit, the former Ohio State quarterback, just say that the arch rival is going to chicken out of playing one of the biggest rivalry games in college football? Wow. And so, that was my thought. I immediately thought, well, there's a column. And I sat down and started writing, especially Reese Davis followed up with the comment, or doubled down on that. And Kirk stuck with that line, basically saying that coaches are telling him that schools are using COVID as an excuse to avoid playing games they're going to lose or be humiliated in. And then he said, I don't really know about Michigan. And he later apologized for that.
Yeah.
But what it says to me, Dan, is everything about the messy end of this season, okay? There's a lot of people that probably really don't want to play. There are some teams that are probably using COVID as an excuse not to play. So that's probably true. But that was a pretty wild accusation, and it underscores the amount of suspicion and cynicism that we are going to be involved in for the next 2 or 3 weeks, because we are dragging this season to the finish line. And there's a lot of players and a lot of teams that really don't want to be there.
What is Michigan's status as far as being able to play football the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, they paused in-person activities Monday and Tuesday. Don't know whether they'll be back on the field today, Wednesday. So they are TBD for this week still. We'll see, if they can get to their game Saturday against Maryland. Ohio State looks like now they're going to play after they missed last week. This is the kind of the state of the Big Ten right now is very tenuous. I mean, it's day to day about who's going to play. And usually if you miss 1 week, it could be a 2-week problem. It looks like Ohio State may avoid that, but we will see with Michigan. Or do they play this week? And then obviously, do they play next week?
But also, Pat, I just wonder when we say, well, it's based on the eye test, it's based off your resume. If Ohio State only plays 4 or 5 games, I don't know how that playoff selection committee can honestly look at them and go, yep, they're one of the 4 best teams in the country. As much as we want to base this on, past the talent they have, who's the quarterback, they haven't done anything to distinguish themselves as one of the 4 best teams in the country when it's all said and done.
Right? No, I mean, that's the thing. You'd be looking at basically a half a resume compared to some other schools that have played literally twice as many games. Brian Kelly was pretty interesting a couple of games ago, made a point when they got to 8. He said, we have played a Big Ten schedule. He made his point pretty clear that, that the different number of games will be a major flashpoint arguing point for the committee and for fans everywhere. And Gary Barta, the chair of the selection committee, did say last night that it's close for 4 between Ohio State and Texas A&M, which has lost but has played more games. So I think the committee's absolutely going to look at that, and that's going to be a down-to-the-wire discussion. I mean, if you're Ohio State, you really need to play every possible game you can.
I was also wondering, could you see a scenario where Florida beats Alabama and Clemson barely beats Notre Dame, and they would still all stay in the top 4, and they would cancel out Ohio State?
Yeah. Oh, I think if Florida beats Alabama, that you would have a pretty strong argument for 2 SEC teams. And then absolutely if Clemson, like Notre Dame, I think is really close to being in right now. All they've got to do is
even
play
with
Syracuse,
the loss,
even with a loss, as long as they don't get dump trucked. If it's a 4 touchdown loss and Trevor Lawrence lights them up and you can say, oh, that's the difference. Then that may preclude them. But if it's a close game and they have beaten Clemson once and lost to them once, I think they're pretty close to being in. And I think Alabama, same thing. As long as they could lose to Florida, as long as it didn't 56-0, which it wouldn't be, and I think probably still get in as well.
Kyle Trask, the Heisman, it's his to lose.
Probably, boy. Me as a Heisman voter, I generally tend to wait until the last minute, and I want to see everything. But I mean, he's been great. He was definitely the front runner. But Zach Wilson has been awfully good at BYU. He just doesn't quite have the platform. I still think Trevor Lawrence is the best player. Justin Fields is running up against the problem of enough reps, enough performances, enough stats. I think there's still enough, several people I want to look at for the next couple of weeks before I decide.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm a Heisman voter as well. But if you would have said to me 2 years ago, Trevor Lawrence is going to leave Clemson and not have a Heisman trophy.
Yeah, shocking, really. And especially hasn't been hurt and the team hasn't lost. That's the kind of thing that it is very unusual to be in that situation. I still think he's going to get a lot of votes this year. I really do.
But do you think that this would be a career achievement award for Trevor Lawrence in some people's eyes? It
could be. It could be. He's having a really good season. He missed a month. There were 2 games that he didn't play, and then Clemson didn't play for a couple weeks. He's, I believe, 9th nationally in pass efficiency. He's doing well. It's just some other quarterbacks have had more opportunities and done a lot with them.
Always great to talk to you, Pat. Safe travels back home. We appreciate your time as always.
My pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
That's Pat Forde, Sports Illustrated senior writer covering college basketball and college football.